Some friends of mine drove me down to report, and so we walked through the gate. They said, "Well, what ship are you going on?" I said, "Well, it's got to be that one there, because that little thing back there is not going to go across the ocean." But it turned out she was an excellent seaboat.
Relative to all the other ships in our fleet, I think it's the little boat that could.
Those of us who've sailed on research ship Oceanus know she's a hardy ship that can handle all types of conditions. Oceanus is often called the workhorse of the Hole Oceanographic Institution's 3 deep-sea ships. Oceanus is the smallest at 177 feet. With her operating crew of 12, Oceanus can host 20 scientists conducting science at sea for up to a month at a time. Over 35 years, Oceanus has conducted nearly 500 science operations, covering hundreds of thousands of miles from Georges Bank to the Red Sea. Now, Oceanus is retiring. Oceanus is one of 3 ships in the intermediate class owned by the National Science Foundation. She was scheduled for a planned phase-out between 2011 and 2015. It turns out Oceanus will go out of service on the earlier end of that window. For the many who've sailed on her and made the ship their home, Oceanus will be missed. She leaves a legacy of can-do and a tight-knit at-sea community for scientists and sailors alike. Dennis McGillicuddy is one of a handful of scientists who've become regulars on the Oceanus. McGillicuddy has sailed on 15 cruises over 7 years as chief scientist on board.
By my count, we have covered more than 3,700 nautical miles of track line. We've deployed 310 XBTs, done 46 CTD stations, 23 mock tows.
I remember my very first cruise that I was ever chief scientist on was actually on Oceanus in a Gulf of Maine trip in 2003. I sort of felt my education as a chief scientist really began on Oceanus, and they really helped me understand what that partnership between science and ship's crew can be about.
I think we had a pretty loyal following over the years of certain chief scientists and their projects that asked for the ship time and time again because it get the job done for them.
Oceanus was designed in the 1960s with the rough, wintry seas of the North Atlantic in mind. She was to replace the aging Crawford, an old Coast Guard cutter probably used to bust rum runners during Prohibition. She was to work in both the deep sea and near shore. Hui naval architect Jonathan Leiby wrote up Oceanus's specifications. Then, naval architects at the Boston-based firm John Gilbert's Associates prepared the drawings, taking their inspiration from the fishing boats that make weeks-long trips to sea. The result was a ship with a sweeping, curved bow known as sheer. She also had cambered decks, meaning they were sloped to allow water to drain overboard. To combat heavy seas, her hull ran deep, down 17.5 feet below the water.
And one of the things about the Oceanus that you will probably never see here again is she was built with sheer and camber. And that they don't build ships like that anymore.
She also had 2 stacks arranged like king posts on either side of the bridge. It made for a distinctive look.
Oh, I liked the ship right from the beginning. I tend to like the smaller boats. And I liked her design, although it was the stacks in the front of the wheelhouse were kind of funny in that, but I thought she kind of had a rakish look to her.
Her engine was also up front.
On a ship like the Atlantis, too, the ends of the ship is where people lived, right, and that's where their most motion was. So I figured if we put the engine in the front, get it out of the way, and put the people where it was comfortable, the people would be happier and the science could work better. And the engine didn't care if it was in the front of the ship going up and down because that's what engines did anyway.
Peterson Shipyard won the contract to build Oceanus and her sister ship Wacoma in 1973.
I was to supervise the ship construction, but I found the shipyard was so competent, they were better if I left them alone than I went out and told them what to do. There was just never any arguments and no problems. We cut out a few things on during the construction to save money. For instance, the specification said just have a little flagpole way at the stern with the American flag, and I think we saved $700 by eliminating that.
When Oceanus arrived in Woods Hole in the fall of 1975, she was ready for science. But there was something peculiar about her color. Her hull was not freshly coated with blue paint. Her house wasn't a crisp white. She was battleship gray.
I found that the basic primer we had, we didn't need paint to protect it. So after they did the finished paint, we just brought the ship home that way. And the shipyard owner was so embarrassed that I forget how much we saved, but he, in the last minute, said he'd paint it for free because he didn't want it to go out looking gray and dingy. And I told him I appreciated that, but if we brought it home painted, nobody realized how poor we were.
Dutch Wegman is Huey's port engineer. He came to Huey in 1976 to sail on RV Nor. In the 1980s, he sailed as chief engineer on Oceanus before coming ashore to work in the port office.
And when I first got hired, there was a couple of ships over there, and so I went to take a peek over there, and here's this nice white and blue ship, looks beautiful, and then this gray thing. I thought Oceanus was the one they were getting rid of, and that the chain was the new one.
In the early 1990s, Oceanus was due for a refit. In typical Huey style, scientists and crew had a say in what changes the ship might undergo, like redesigning the bridge.
We actually designed the new bridge with cardboard and plywood and had the Huey carpenters make a mock-up of it.
The full-size mock-up allowed them to make room for new and improved technologies like radar and closed-circuit TV. The finished bridge was state-of-the-art for its time. Designers also decided to replace the old steel stacks with one lighter aluminum stack.
One of the things we all agreed on with Oceanus was we loved the way it ran in heavy weather. It had a long, very long roll. It was long, but it was very predictable, and so it was a great seaboat. And so when we did the midlife refit, a lot of our plans were made around making sure we didn't change that.
In 1994, Oceanus went back to the shipyard for her big refit. 1 year and $3 million later, Oceanus had a radical new look. In addition to a new stack and bridge, she had a bigger main lab and space to add a van that could provide additional berths for scientists. One thing that didn't change was the size of the living quarters.
Oceanus cabins are pretty tiny. I can't say I've ever been in any cabins that are smaller than that, and that can be tough when you want to do a sit-up.
The first time I had my sons come down to take a look at the boat, that's what they said, "You live in here?" I said, "Dad, we've got closets bigger than this at home." And then they still couldn't get it out of their mind that I was living in that little space. But for me, it's comfortable. I'm here to work. It's just a place to sleep.
Added up, Bosun Clindor Cacho and able-bodied seaman Leo Fitz have sailed on Oceanus for almost 2 decades. They're just 2 of many crew members over the years who've come to Oceanus and stayed, despite sometimes tough conditions.
I'm employee of Hole Oceanographic Institution 12 years, and all 12 years I'm child of my mothership.
I had the opportunity to come over to the institution and work my way up from the bottom to the top as far as I am now. They give you the chance to show what you are capable of without saying that this guy's been here longer than you, the guys have seniority. It's just that you show what you know, and they trust you, and they give you the shot. If you pass it, you pass. You are in there. If you don't, well, they keep working with you until you get to the point that they want you to be.
It may sound funny, but I guess they appreciate a challenge. Oceanus is obviously very capable and very seaworthy, but it can get a little lively out there at times. I don't know what it is, whether it's the mystique about Oceanus that they enjoy sailing on her, or getting bounced around from bridge wing to bridge wing, or whatever the case may be. They seem to enjoy it. Our crews are very loyal to the ship.
we also hit some of the worst weather I had ever experienced on George's Bank. I had to tie my chair in. And on one day, I was standing on the starboard side of the main lab, and we had this roll, and I went flying through the air and hit the bulkhead on the port side with my hands out to break my crash into the wall. We didn't fail to get the jobs done that were needed to be done. I just didn't have a good time out there. Decision making that goes on about, is it too rough to deploy a piece of gear? And it all has to do with how you handle gear on a ship. And the Oceanus crew is really good, really skilled at handling gear, even in tough weather.
Having worked with Oceanus and her crew for this many years, having developed those relationships and a real sense of magic when we're aboard and things are working right and things are going really well, I'm really going to miss that, because from my perspective, Captain Mello and his crew really go the extra mile to make sure the mission is accomplished, and that sort of can-do attitude that pervades the Oceanus crew, because they really are an extraordinary group of people.
They keep doing it without complaint or without a lot of fanfare, but they do such a heck of a job. It's just, you end up with a tremendous amount of admiration and respect for them at the end of the day.
All oceanographic ships work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Without cable TV, and for a long time, internet or phone, the main source of excitement often centered around a good, hot meal. One cook, Hugh Dakers, created his own legacy in his years sailing as steward aboard Oceanus from the early 1970s until his retirement in 1994.
He was probably the world's best sea cook. He was an extremely hard worker. When you got up in the morning and there may be fresh rolls and any kind of egg you would ever want, he knew how we all were. He's a great guy and a great shipmate.
Yeah, he did a lot for the ship.
He sure did.
Yeah.
On a ship with one main corridor, the galley inevitably becomes the social hub, the heart of the ship.
Never give up and try to make everybody happy.
One of the things I like the best about Oceanus is that you feel like everybody's together. There's just not that many places to go, so everybody's in it together. You see crew members walk by all day, every day, through the main lab, which is the only corridor through the ship, and you really feel connected to everyone.
There's something about working in a smaller space like that, right? So everybody has to work together for the mission to be accomplished. Every job is important. There's no hiding in a 177 platform, and that sense of community, taking all of our meals together, working together, hanging out in the library together, I mean, it's a family in that sense, and that leads to a level of camaraderie, well, that like I say, I'm really going to miss.
Oceanus's future is largely undecided. For some of her crew, it's like losing a home.
Yeah, we caught us surprise, just like if somebody sneaking on your house on your back door.
And the news about the vessel will be out of duty. This was adds a knife in the heart of anyone. And the vessel is part of our life.
When you sail on any ship, you have a relationship with it, because that's what's keeping you alive. And I was on Oceanus for so long that was my baby.
Oceanus scored high marks on her last NSF inspection because she's been well maintained throughout her 36 years at Hui. Her hull and decks are still sound. Her engine has many hours left to run. While she may no longer work as a research ship for Hui, she has years of good sailing left.
The theme of Oceanus for many years now has been to support our customers, support science, believe in the support as well, and give it our best. And I believe that we've accomplished that.
Somebody's going to get a good boat.